And first up, we're going to be talking about The Killer from 1989, directed by the guy who directed the movie we'll be talking about in our next segment, John Woo. I thought I'd class things up a little bit by first saying that General William Westmoreland in the documentary Hearts and Minds, a future Criterion Creeps film, says quite repulsively in it, the Oriental doesn't put the same high price on life as does the Westerner. Life is cheap in the Orient. Those words come to mind.
God.
Yeah, I thought I'd just drop that in there. But those words come to mind when I watch John Woo's action movies, particularly The Killer and Hard Boiled.
Holy. Good God.
Yeah.
Okay. We set the bar high, I guess.
Yep, right out of the gate.
Mhm.
So, one thing I thought we would mention too is the actual initial release dates for these two movies, The Killer and Hard Boiled. The Killer was released April 1st of 1998. Hard Boiled came out 2 months later, June 10th, 1998.
98?
Yeah, on DVD.
Or 88?
1998.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, on DVD when the Criterion DVDs initially were released, and then when I was back looking at this, I realized Walkabout came out in May of 1998, so they weren't really coming out in numerical order. They were kind of probably hopping around a little bit, and it was a point in time when only one Criterion movie would come out a month, as opposed to the 4, 5, or 6 that we now get a month here in 2016, making us catching up to the latest release of a Criterion Impossible. Yeah.
Yep.
But that's neither here nor there. So this is the first and only time in our Criterion Creep that we're going to be able to really talk about John Woo in the context of reviews. So I thought we should make it count.
Okay.
So a little biography here on old John. Chinese-born Hong Kong. His father was a school teacher, but unable to work due to tuberculosis. His mother was a manual laborer, at one point homeless due to a massive fire in 1953. At age 3, Wu was diagnosed with a serious medical condition, unable to walk correctly until age 8. He was raised Christian, which he remains to this day, and explains some of the Christian imagery and whatnot that appears in the film The Killer. At one point, he even wanted to be a Christian minister, which is interesting when you consider one of his biggest influences, Martin Scorsese, also wanted to be a Catholic priest. So I don't know what it is about those directors wanting to be spiritual leaders.
Don't forget Mel Gibson.
And Big Mel.
He has a church on his property.
Oh, well, there you go. There's something to it, maybe. John Woo, he entered the Hong Kong film industry in 1969. His directorial debut was the film The Young Dragons in 1974, which is notable for its Jackie Chan choreography. And it got picked up by Golden Harvest for distribution, which led to more martial arts and comedy films for John Woo. I guess, though, he wasn't particularly satisfied with his career as it was going along, and things weren't looking good for him sticking around making movies until one of his ideas for a movie, which would become A Better Tomorrow, was financed by Sui Hark. And this led to basically John Woo inventing gun fu, as people seem to call it online. And that's kind of what John Woo has become famous and linked to forever. A Better Tomorrow went on to be a big hit. He continued on making what I guess is colloquially known as the Heroic Bloodshed series, which are things like A Better Tomorrow, A Better Tomorrow 2, Bullet in the Head, and then, The Killer and Hard Boiled. These movies are kind of like, they usually have Chow Yun Fat. And there's like the tropes of like manliness and masculinity, honor, loyalty, all playing out over blood-splattered urban hell.
Oh yeah.
Bullet in the Head's got like one of the most like apocalyptic dark endings of anything around. So not only were these movies a big deal in China, I think like Better Tomorrow was like one of the highest grossing films in China for a while there. And John Woo and one of his peers, Ringo Lam, they found an audience in North America as well. And I think a lot of that was because his movies completely outdid American action movies in like the ways that what American movies were doing, his movies were doing it in just like way harder, way faster. So After Hard Boiled, John Woo went to America, and now you know the rest of the story. No. Hard Target was a studio Jean-Claude Van Damme hijack fuckfest. I guess like whatever he was doing, the studio would interfere. They didn't get it. They didn't know what he was doing. And I think I've also heard that Jean-Claude Van Damme, like he kind of wanted to take the reins and like he wanted to be a director too. And I guess maybe he also wanted to be like a preacher or something. Then Broken Arrow came along with old Johnny Travolta and Christian Slater. It was a little bit closer to like what a John Woo movie is, I guess, or was, but it was also kind of like compromised. But then, of course, came Face Off, which I think if that exact same movie had come out in Hong Kong about like 6 years ago, it would be like his legit masterpiece. There's just something about a bunch of white dudes running around and dual wielding guns. It just looks really goofy, especially when it's Nick Cage and
fuck off.
Travolta. Yeah,
fuck off. That movie rules.
No.
Yeah,
it's okay. It's all right.
That movie rules.
So
you're fun.
Then Mission Impossible 2. Remember that? That came out. That was a big deal at the time. But that movie actually isn't very good.
Is that an Alan Smithy?
No, that is a John Wooey. And then it was all downhill from there. Because then there was Wind Talkers and Paycheck. And then John Woo hit the road back to China. He made his historical epic Red Cliff, which I still haven't watched. But that was basically it. That was like kind of the end of his like directorial career. And he's like been producing and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, America really took a lot out of the man. And also, I guess like he's gotten older, and I can't imagine it's a old man's game making the type of stuff that he wants to do, hence the historical epic. Also in the context of like how China wants certain movies to be made, and it's a lot easier to make something like a historical epic than a contemporary thing, unless you're Johnny To.
Yeah. Well, he's 69 now, so not everybody's George Miller at 70 filming in the desert for fucking years. So
I might as well mention too that in both cases of the movies that we're watching, we had to watch the Dragon Dynasty Blu-rays, as the Criterions are number one, long out of print, and apparently not very good transfers either. Years ago, before the Dragon Dynasty versions came out from Miramax, those Criterions went for like big money because there was no like equivalent at all in North America to watch them on, so you still had to settle for them, even though I think it was The Killer was actually letterboxed, which is just terrible. But even like from what I've read, like I think the Dragon Dynasty Blu-rays look okay. They're not groundbreaking, amazing prints or anything like that. I think a lot of that comes down to like kind of the film stock that was being used at the time in Hong Kong. But and like I don't know how restored they actually are. And Miramax is kind of legendary for being horrendous to their Hong Kong movies through their Dragon Dynasty line. But at least with the ones that we watched, the proper aspect ratio, they actually have proper subtitles as opposed to the dub titles, which is just like it's the subtitling of the bad English dub where characters are named John and talk and that, which are just terrible. I couldn't even imagine that. Or if I did watch them, it was a long time ago. The one downside, of course, is that with the Dragon Dynasty Blu-rays, we don't get access to the John Woo commentary tracks, which is a bummer.
You would have watched those.
I would have probably checked them out. Yeah, I think I would have. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, let's talk The Killer. So, synopsis time. A killer synopsis. Chow Yun-fat plays assassin for hire Ah Zhang, who goes on a job for the Triad to kill a dude. And during the ensuing bloody carnage, a la John Woo movies, a nightclub singer named Jenny is blinded by muzzle flash, while not all bad Ah Zhang tries to protect her. Ah Zhang is racked with guilt and starts up a relationship with the blinded Jenny, who is of course oblivious to who he is and his responsibility in blinding her. There is an operation possible to reverse the blindness before it is total, and that is going to require some fat cash, so Ah Zhang takes one more final job for the Triad. Our second protagonist is Hong Kong cop Li Ying, played by Danny Lee, who is working undercover trying to bust some gun dealers, and in another gun battle, an unlucky patrolman gets blown away, and Li Ying is left frustrated with the problems of the system. This theme is probably going to come up again in other films we're talking about tonight. Our two protagonists collide when Li Ying is on a protection detail of a piece of shit business crime figure man who is Ah Zhang's target. We get Chow Yun Fat rocking a fake dad stash and a dust of salt and pepper on his jet black mop, sniping the scumbag from a speedboat, and we get a nice headshot. We get a chase, and Chow Yun Fat kind of gets away somehow, but not for too long, as he's being now going to be double crossed by the new triad leader who sent him to go kill his own family member, essentially, to take power. But Ah Zhang is too badass for all that. Action abounds. A young child is wounded. Ah Zhang is not so bad, and he saves the girl. He rushes her to the hospital with Li Ying behind. And they meet up at the hospital, but they miss one another in sort of a standoff. And it's just it's all those like real calculated ways of getting them to be separated apart. But it's actually played fairly well for this type of thing. Another principal actor in the story is character is Feng Sai, who is the future that lies in wait for Ah Zhang, the crippled hired gun for the triads, who now acts as a go-between in these murder-for-hire arrangements, and good friend to Ah Zhang. Zhang wants his money. Feng Sai comes with a briefcase, but it's filled with nothing but fake paper, and he's actually been sent to kill him, but he doesn't, and he fails. Basically, that kind of sets up like sort of this ongoing relationship between the two, because they both have a lot of respect for one another, but they're kind of caught up in a bad situation, and kind of goes from there. Some police work follows, and the Jenny link to Ah Zhang leads Li Ying to Jenny's apartment, and our two leads meet up in classic John Woo style, gun to gun. A more fun than serious cat and mouse chase relationship between killer and cop begins, and Lee is entranced by those moments of good old Ah Zhang's like better side, I guess. He's kind of like, well, this guy can't be all bad, and he kind of starts questioning I guess his own like morality or something like that. So, in the rest of the movie, parking garage gun battles, suburban house shootouts, death, blood, explosions, waves of men running in front of automatic weapons and shotguns, all building up to a church shootout to end all church shootouts that Ah Zhang has been frequenting as he wrestles with his own questions of morality and spirituality and what his place is in this world. And dudes getting fucking shot to death, and the movie ends on the darkest note yet of the Criterion Collection films we've watched. So RJ, you know that this is the first movie we've watched where the director is still alive?
No shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of weird. This is actually this is the first movie we've watched from a country that I've actually been to.
Really?
So this is a whole bunch of firsts for us.
Me learning that is a first as well.
Oh, you didn't know that? I've been to China twice, actually. Beijing, Shanghai, and a bunch of cities in between. Wow. Never Hong Kong, though, which I think is the setting for both of these movies. So, were you involved in any roving gun battles? A few. Wow. It's just part of the culture, man. When you get there, when you get off the plane, they give you have your choice of a gun or Peking duck. I chose the duck, so I did. I still kind of got into some of these gung fu battles, but not as many as I would have maybe if I had gone the alternative route. Did you know that John Woo has never fired a gun before? I find that surprising. It seems like he's in love with them. Yeah, he seems to really be in love with the mechanism of them, like, and how you can use them. Yeah. So, yeah, this movie is like amazing. Fucking right, it is. Do you have any thoughts, RJ? Yeah, I have thoughts. Yeah, I agree with you. This movie fucking rules. And spoiler alert, I think this is the better of the two. Okay. I don't know what people think about these movies, because quite frankly, I had never even fucking heard of them before until you lent them to me a while back. Not even that long ago. No, it was like 2 or 3 months ago. Yeah. So I just had the treat of watching them again. No, I think this movie fucking rules. I think it really highlights John Woo's like cinematic style. Like his use of colors, red and blue. Like there's so many scenes that are just like flooded with color. Like it's all blue in one scene, and then the next scene is all red. It just looks fucking great. He has a lot of shots where it's like black silhouettes with blue backgrounds, where it's like skylines or like oceans, and it'll be like Chow Yun Fat and just a black silhouette on top of a blue background. I think that fucking is just awesome. It looks so good. What else is there? I think John Woo is in love with churches and doves and scaffolds. I don't know what it is, but every one of his movies I've seen has like construction workers with like sparks coming out of stuff when it's like super like impractical. It's like they wouldn't be working now, but I love it. It's super cool. This movie has a lot of that classic John Woo freeze frame, where it's like a character will finish a monologue and then it'll just like freeze frame and like zoom in a little bit for like 3 seconds or so, and then it like kind of breaks away. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
John Woo does something really, really interesting where like when he films like crowded scenes, like crowded scenery, where there's a scene on a bus in this movie, and like you get a feeling that like there's just people everywhere because the cops are looking for the bad guy. But what John Woo does, it's very like John Cassavetes, where he'll just have like people walk in front of the camera and like kind of like obstruct the camera view. So like I thought it was interesting because I feel like in Killing of the Chinese Bookie, Cassavetes does that a lot, where like people will just be walking in front of the camera and there'll be like periods where you can't see because there will be like a guy's head there or something.
Yeah.
I really like that. I don't know why. I guess maybe just because it's unconventional, or it's just different from what a lot of people do, I guess. So I think that's really cool. That's my general takes on the movie itself, but I have some individual things I really like too. So do you want me to lay those down on you right now, or do you want
we could do maybe a little back and forth on that?
Yeah, why don't you take it?
For a second there, I thought I had written all these notes out, and I was like, where did I put them? And I just found them all.
Okay.
So, the first thing that the movie like obviously pops out with is like sort of the like the Christianity, I guess, that like is at the very beginning of this movie, which like made me immediately think of like kind of the Catholicism in like Martin Scorsese movies. And of course it's like I thought of that because like I think I read that years and years ago, that like one of his ideas with making The Killer was that he basically wanted to make kind of an ode to like Jean-Pierre Melville's La Samurai and to like Martin Scorsese movies like Mean Streets. Like sort of like the Harvey Keitel character in that, or like even like Abel Ferreira, Bad Lieutenant, Harvey Keitel, and sort of like these like kind of conflicted characters. Which I mean, I not a practicing religious person whatsoever. I would call myself an atheist, and so I find this material always interesting though. Because usually like a better director will kind of make these sort of issues more universal and like kind of like on a humanist level rather than anything else. And usually the movies that fail to do that, to make it kind of more broad, they just are failing at it for me. But yeah, I mean, that was like an obvious thing. I don't really have anything to say about that. But the one thing I noticed, though, is like I kind of made these notes about like things that John Woo I thought was doing. And then I would listen to the John Woo interviews on these movies, and he would say exactly what I was thinking. So I was like, I'm not like proud of myself for picking these things out, but I think that he's really good at like citing his work, I guess, in a way that it's like, yeah, you can watch it and appreciate it on this like real easy to get level. Which I guess is like maybe populist in a weird way. But I mean, he's making action movies, but he's making them like fairly artfully. Like one of the things that like I didn't pick up on the last time I rewatched this until I'm watching it again this week was like how the story in The Killer is basically like Charlie Chaplin's City Lights, in like the way that, so in City Lights, if you're not familiar, it's about a blind girl, and like Charlie Chaplin kind of like she's a flower girl who's blind, and he kind of like starts helping her out. And I mean, this is like, he's not like Charlie Chaplin doesn't fire a gun and blind her, but he's like trying, he's like kind of like sympathetic to her, and like he's like, he has no money, but he's like going out of his way to help her out and stuff like that. And sort of like the whole like end of the movie is like when he's like down and out and like destroyed, like he was basically, what he's trying to do in the rest of the movies, he's trying to get money together to actually get her eyes, it's the surgery required so she's not blind anymore. And then he winds up going to jail, but the money gets to her. And when he gets out, he's like obviously been in jail and has like nothing to his name, and he's just like beaten down. He looks like he's got that salt and pepper going on in his hair.
Oh yeah.
And like, so he sees the flower girl again, but of course she never saw him when he was not in jail, when he was helping her, so she doesn't recognize him at first. And like there's sort of that kind of like popped to mind watching this. I mean, it's not like a direct thing, but there's something to it, I guess, in the storyline ways or story wise. I mean, that's the slow-mo in the movie, like that's used like during all the action scenes. I mean, that's like just pure Sam Peckinpah. But I mean, that's like the obvious thing, like from Wild Bunch or whatever, that he like really stylized that violence. But I also think there's like a certain like polish in choreography to his stuff, where it's like it's like that dance. It's like almost like, yeah, it's like what people call like bullet ballet. But like, actually, I think of Brian De Palma. Who, I don't know if you've watched a lot of Brian De Palma movies, but like his use of his like use of slow motion and stuff like that in music. It's like he's got such control, and like, I mean, John Woo completely does that. Like he's like, I mean, from what I was reading, like a lot of like the shots in the movies and the screenplays, they're really improvised. Like they're doing that stuff like the day of. And so these movies have like fairly long shoots and stuff like that. Like, I think Hard Boiled was something like 112 days or something like that, which I guess for like a Hong Kong film is actually quite long for what's just ostensibly just an action movie. But, yeah, I mean, like here's the real like craftsmanship in the stuff he's doing that like you don't get in, like American movies at that same time. I don't think really. But yeah, and then even like when I was watching the movie, there's like all the stuff with Zhang's harmonica playing, and I just kept thinking, oh, it's just like Once Upon a Time in the West, and apparently that's exactly what John Woo was going for.
Yeah,
yeah, which I was like,
yeah,
oh,
no, that makes sense.
Yeah, just like, I don't know, I like that he's working on a fair level playing field. He's like, he likes movies, and he's just like, I'm gonna put that in there. And I mean, it's at the same level as like Tarantino references a lot of the times.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I feel like when I rewatched Killer like several months ago, and then I lent it to you, I think I wrote in like a little snippet review on Letterboxd, was that I felt like John Woo's action movies have somehow fallen out of favor. Like people don't talk about them like they should be, in my opinion. Like I think they're really great pieces of movie making, and particularly action. And it's just strange to me that like maybe it's like the people who we all know they're good, and that's the assumption, so we don't have to talk about them anymore, which I think is so like, I don't know, it's a false thing, because I mean, I think there's gonna come a point where people will be like, why didn't anyone ever tell me about this? If that, but
no, I get what you mean.
Yeah. Do you ever stare at walls of drawings of Chow Yun-fat, RJ?
Pretty much all day.
Okay.
Pretty much all day, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I thought so that the cop's in love with Chow Yun-fat, right?
He's entranced. Well,
because like when he's describing him to like the police cartoonist, or like whatever that guy's like title is, like I don't know, what do you call that guy?
Yeah, sure.
Mugshot, whatever.
Composite artist, yeah.
Yeah, when he's describing him, it's like so sensual and like weird and like erotic, because he's like he doesn't say anything physical like at all. Yeah. He's just like, he's a strong man. He's got passion.
Yes.
He's got like this and that, and then he's like, his eyes are, they'll stare back into your soul. Like he doesn't say a single thing
that are helpful.
That's helpful or related to the physical attributes of Chow Yun-fat at all. It's just all like things that are like that he admires. So I was like, this guy just fucking is in love with him. And then even when he meets Chow Yun-fat and the girl, and he's like, this is small B, or shrimp head, I'm small B. I was like, those are definitely sexual innuendos, right? Like, Anyways, my point is that guy is fucking in love with Chow Yun Fat.
I
For
believe
sure.
I believe my line here was cop description of Chow, how I would describe myself.
Okay, well that's very very telling of yourself.
Yeah, I'm in lust with myself.
Sure, who isn't?
So yeah, I mean, oh yeah, there's the other thing too is like when you were mentioning the freezing, like in the action moments, like those little
Freeze
beats.
frames?
Yeah, well, you know who? Apparently, that's a throwback to our good friend Francois Truffaut. Because
No
if
shit.
you recall in the 400 Blows, the last big punch of that movie is the big freeze frame on the kid. Well, I guess like, and I don't remember this really because it's been like a little while, but in Jules and Jim, which is actually what John Woo actually specifically was talking about, he's like, yeah, the freeze frames are just like in Jules and Jim, and I was like, huh.
It's been about a year since I've seen Jules and Jim. I don't remember it in that. I remember the Truffaut one, or in the 400 Blows one, because
I
that was
hope
pretty
so.
recent. But,
Yeah.
but I remember I thought it was like really weird, like out of place.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we talked about it on the show. I heard it was just because like the kid didn't hold the pose long enough, so Truffaut was like he wanted to end on like the freeze frame, so he did it because the kid
blew
didn't.
it.
Yeah, he blew it. He fucking blew it. That's one of the 400 blows.
Yeah.
So, no, yeah. Anyways, continue.
No, that's about it. For that bit of thought.
Okay. I have some
do you
things.
recall the last line of the film?
I think
last-
it was Mel Gibson rules with a Z.
Close. It was shrimp head.
Oh, yeah. He says it 3 times.
Yeah, shrimp head
in a row.
and
Shrimp head.
that's they leave. Makes you think.
Shrimp head.
But yeah, go
Shrimp.
for it. Go for it, Daddy.
Big Daddy's
Yeah.
coming down to Leathertown.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's some individual notes I have.
Yes.
The way Chow Yun Fat smokes is fucking insanely ludicrous. He like holds it with all of his fingers, like
Yeah.
by the filter, so it's
Yes.
like standing completely vertical. I've never seen a person smoke like that in my entire life. What kind of nonsense is he into? Anyways,
it's the intensity. I mean,
Yeah,
because he puts his
yeah.
fingers all into like it's like a singularity of his focus of his attention.
Sure, let's say that.
Let's.
When Chow Yun Fat goes to the singer girl's apartment for the first time,
Yes.
he like sees pictures of her, and then like he gets really sad because like she used to play tennis and stuff, but now she can't see.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for you, Jarrett.
Yes.
In your house, do you have framed pictures of yourself? Not family photos, not photos with your girlfriend, but individual pictures of yourself framed that are on display.
Well, I'm not a character in a movie, so no.
Okay. You know what else, though? Not only does this lady have framed pictures of herself, but she goes to make tea and she's like, let me put on some music. The music she puts on is a fucking recording of her singing the song that he just saw her sing at the fucking bar. So what I'm going to start doing when I invite people over to my house, I'm going to have like the whole room decorated with like just portraits of myself in various sensual erotic positions, and then I'll be like how about some music, and I'll put it on and it'll just be me doing covers of Bon Jovi songs.
Well, it could just be the podcast, and
It could be the podcast,
after you become deaf.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But no, I'll do my Bon Jovi. I have a Bon Jovi cover band called Ron Bob Jovi. That's copyrighted, so none of you fuckers get to thinking that you can just step in on that stuff. So I'm gonna play that.
Yeah.
So I'll play that. So anyways, I thought that was really fucking weird. What else is it? So hey, why do people fill briefcases with like paper to like that's cut into the size of money? Like why don't they just put like a phone book in there?
Yeah, I've noticed that in a few movies where it's like that's a lot of effort to like just make some slices of paper. Well, because like usually you're supposed to put like a dollar bill on the top to make it look right, to like at least pass the initial inspection. But when you like all you do is you crack it open, it's just a bunch of blank pieces of paper. I I don't know. It's that insult to injury, I guess. That it's like, we hate your ass so much. We got a guy. We have one guy in the organization, in the triad, who has nothing else better to do. We can't trust him because he can't shoot and he's kind of slow, but he can cut paper because he's really learned that skill. And when we want to fuck you out of money, we are going to send you that message. And he's going to. So this is all in the director's cut.
Sure.
Yeah, it's in the special features on that Criterion that it's going to cost you $180 to buy. Jesus. So just trust me on it and buy it, and then you'll get to see that scene. Okay. That's why it's like, I guess, spite, and because RJ, film is a visual medium, and that's why people have photos.
Sure.
I get what you're saying, but no, it's movie magic.
Okay. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
I really like this movie.
Oh, I know.
These are just funny things that I thought, like, because I even thought about that. Like, I was like, are they taking the piss right here? But
yeah.
But so, because like I was like, okay, well, maybe it's like a weight thing. Like the person would like pick it up, and like if it was empty, they'd be like, wait a minute. But it's also like, well, that's not true, because if like they thought that someone would like pick it up and like inspect it by weight, they would just look inside. So I can't remember what it is, but I know I've seen one movie where there's a phone book in a briefcase. So I feel like that's just the easier thing. Anyways, whatever. One thing I thought was really funny is, so after the boat chase scene, Chow Yun-fat's on the beach, and then he gets into a shootout. Yeah. He shoots a guy behind a blanket or like a beach towel that's like hanging on a line to dry. Yeah. And it catches on fire.
Yes.
And there's nothing around it that would cause it to catch on fire. And I thought that was interesting and pretty super funny. Another funny thing is that guy who is in the apartment, the cop, and he's just throwing garbage down the stairs. I thought that was funny as well.
Well, because he had to complete the illusion that he was just a guy. He's the garbage man in the building. Yeah.
Exactly. One thing I think is cool, or two things that John Woo does a lot, he shoots the shit out of people. Like, eight bullets into the chest isn't enough. Like, a lot of his characters live after that. You need at least 60 bullets to the fucking face to be dead. He also likes to dress his characters in white a lot.
Oh, yeah, those white jumpsuits at
white
the end.
Jumpsuits. Yeah, an entire mob of like 50 people, all organized in white jumpsuits. And even the house they're in is entirely white. Wow. And it's just so that squibs can look cool, which I actually think is awesome. Like,
that's practical.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Chow Yun-fat's disguises in this movie are super fucking rad. He's like in so many different disguises. Yeah. That's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else? No. Other than that, John Woo loves doves.
Just, that the dove thing is overplayed, because there's no doves in Hard Boiled.
In Face Off, there is.
Yeah. There is.
Face Off has a scene just like Killers, where it's in a church and there's doves.
Yes.
And then there's the people who double guns to the head. That's another John Woo staple. Two people holding guns to each other's heads, and the ammo clicks empty. Well,
how else are they supposed to drive home that they're different sides of the same coin? I mean, come on.
Sex.
Oh. Yeah. The only thing I really want to throw out there with the Killer 2 is there's like a sick bump off one of those scaffolds that you mentioned before, where there's like one of the stuntmen, he takes the hardest fucking drop off that goddamn thing. Like,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
If you've seen the movie, you know exactly the one I'm talking about. Like, it is so like, you feel gravity at that moment. It is something.
He takes a lick, and it's pretty rad.
Yeah. I guess the other thing too is, I mean, this is like where like the nexus point of like talking about the Killer and Hard Boiled starts emerging, but like just these like waves of men coming, and like their strategy is very poor. I think if you like really deconstructed that church scene, there's some problems spatially with what's happening, but it doesn't matter. Like, I kept actually thinking back to Seventh Samurai, and how I kind of mentioned, it's like, what I really like about Seventh Samurai is they lay out that there's 40 guys that are bad guys, and we get them eliminated one by one. Every death is felt.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Not of a concern of John Woo's.
No, he doesn't care.
And I mean, no, it doesn't matter. Actually, I guess like one of the interviews that I did watch with him, he was like mentioning like how they didn't really ever like keep track of that. Like he's like, oh, do we know how many people we've killed so far? Like he can just laugh it off because he doesn't know. Yeah. And I think that's great because it doesn't matter. It's all about like, I mean, it really is like so choreographed, and it's just these dances of just like, we got to keep this moving and keep the excitement and get as much coverage as possible. And it's like, it works amazing. Like it holds up so well. And the story itself is, it's the embodiment of cool. Like I can't think of like another movie that like, when I think about, if I was like, hey, somebody lend me like some cool 80s action movies, it's like that movie's kind of on top. Like that's just like such a, because it's like it actually works as like a good movie too. Like there's like a Michael Mann-ness, like when you were talking about the shots of like the water and stuff like that and of the sky, there's like a vibe to it. It's very like, I mean, it's not as it doesn't have the resonance of Michael Mann cinematography because it doesn't have that like the music that he would choose. It's got like that sort of like cheesy Chinese synth kind of like music that I think totally works in the context of this movie, but I could see why people kind of being turned off by it. Just like I remember like actually with Michael Mann movies, like I used to kind of scoff at like the music in Manhunter. I thought it like really dated the movie. But now I've like I mean, I think also like tastes have really come around on that 80s sound, and it's nowhere near as like grating as I think it was, I think kind of in the late 90s.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, geez, the movie is just like, it's got a lot of great rewatchability. I mean, like there's like points like where I was kind of like doing, like when I usually watch like a really good movie, there's like, I feel comfortable kind of like moving out of the room and doing something else for a minute. Cause I'll be like, yeah, I'm just liking this movie so much. I'm not too worried about about missing anything. Cause I've seen it and it's comfortable food. It's a visual feast.
Fucking right.
Yeah.
You got that right, buddy.
Yeah. Any other things?
Nope.
Good. All right.
I'm good.
Well, that's The Killer. And we're just going to continue talking John Woo as we venture on forth to Hard Boiled. And we're talking Hard Boiled. And first up, a hard boiled synopsis.
Ooh, girl.
Officer Tequila Yuen, Chow Yun Fat once again, and his partner Benny are on a gun smuggler case, and they are on recon at a tea house where I guess people in China get together to drink tea and let their pet birds socialize. But shit goes awry when another gang shows up to blow away their competition with Chow guns ablazing in the middle. Being a cop thriller, things don't end well for poor Benny as he winds up dead, and out of revenge, Tequila puts a bullet in the face of the gangster who killed Benny. This is all to the chagrin of Superintendent Pang, who wanted that gangster alive to testify. Tequila, in so many words, is off the case. Meanwhile, our other protagonist, a high-ranking assassin for the Triads named Alan, played by Tony Young, works for the good Triad boss, Uncle Hoy. We first meet Alan murdering a man in a public library, as good guys do, and we see him celebrated for being good at his job of killing people. And we get the feeling that Uncle Hoy and Alan, they seem like pretty okay dudes. Of course, we begin to pick up the gang rivalry between Uncle Hoy and the other guy who attacked at the tea house. And that's headed by movie bad guy Johnny Wong, played by one of my favorite Hong Kong actors, Anthony Wong. One scene I'll mention is Tequila, pissed about what happened to his partner Benny, braces Johnny Wong on a public street, and Alan, who is making motions with Wong, feeds Tequila the butt of his gun, but spares his life. What I like with that is there's like this continuation of like the big damage from that on the bandage on Chow Yun's head, and like he goes with that for like several scenes afterwards, which is a real nice detail because usually guys are just fine after getting hit in the head with the butt of a gun. So what winds up happening is, in a bid to get closer to Johnny Wong, Alan allows himself to go in deeper with Wong, which results in an unbelievable and savage raid on a warehouse front for weapons dealing and the making of sparks that Uncle Hoy runs. This climaxes with Alan having to kill Uncle Hoy to prove his loyalty to Johnny Wong. After you think you've had all the action you could handle, fucking Tequila comes from the ceiling, smoke grenade, and guns ablazing. One of the questions answered twice is what wins the day, motorcycle or shotgun. Tequila and Alan come face to face, just like in a John Woo movie. Tequila's gun jams, and Alan just smiles and walks away, and leaving Tequila confused as to why he's left behind. not dead. What Alan's deal is and why Tequila is still alive obviously signals to Tequila that something is up and that Alan is undercover, but he's none too pleased with the fact that Alan is killing dudes left and right, and the brass are seemingly okay with that. He tracks down Alan to Alan's sailboat just in time for remnants of Uncle Hoy's gang to attack, and we get more splinter-blowing mayhem, and it seems Tequila and Alan are now on the same page, and it's time for their team up. The final setup for the movie now is that Johnny Wong has Uncle Hoy's guns. He's taken over the gun smuggling racket in Hong Kong. The question, of course, is where all these guns are being kept, because if the police can get those, they can shut them down. And all this collides as information from an informant named Foxy, after being spared by Alan, which means he has to get shot in the chest and tossed into the ocean. But he's okay, folks, for a bit anyway. Foxy tells everyone, or tells Chow Yun-fat the gun depot is at the nearby hospital. The last 40 minutes of this bad boy of a movie is just setup after setup for unmitigated carnage, not seen in any John Woo movie outside of the end of maybe A Better Tomorrow 2. And you get love, betrayal, action, unlimited ammo, lots of babies, peeing babies, and a full array of coverage of what can happen to a man fully strapped up with squibs, left and right. Yeah, so this movie, like The Killer, is also awesome. I guess, like, for if I want to throw out a criticism of the movie, I mean, was it me, or is was it obvious that Alan is like an informant, like, pretty well from the get-go?
Yeah, kind of.
It's like, I mean, okay, we live in a world where, like, Infernal Affairs came out. Obviously, Hard Boiled came out like in 1992. The Infernal Affairs trilogy came out like 15 years ago, and then The Departed, which is a remake of Infernal Affairs, remade that. And I mean, we all kind of know about, like, cops on, like, undercover, like, at this point. I mean, there was Serpico, but I mean, that movie's all about him, Donnie Brasco and stuff. I mean, there's just certain things you're like, why are we following this one guy around? And I guess, like, it kind of maybe is playing off the whole idea of, like, The Killer, that there is just an assassin who's, like, can be a good guy, and maybe there's that aspect to it. But I mean, the whole thing with, like, the flowers and secret messages and stuff like that, because, like, even when I watched this movie for the first time, like, probably 99 2000, watching a VHS copy that my friend Corey had, I was kind of like, oh yeah, no, he's a cop, he's undercover. Like, I kind of just knew that, and I don't know if, like, the movie ever, like, cares about that aspect, or we're supposed to feel like that. What did you think of that bit?
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, I think you can see that coming, but it didn't really pull me out of it at all. Like,
no. Kind
of like you said, where it's just a thing in cop movies now. Like, with all those movies you named, it's like, yeah, it's just how some of them are. It's just a setup, man. So no, yeah, it didn't really. Yeah, I thought it was fine.
How do you feel about jazz, RJ?
I actually like jazz a lot.
Okay.
Because I listen to it at work. Because when I'm, like, writing stuff, like writing papers and stuff, I can't really listen to, like, real or, like, normal music or modern music, because the lyrics distract me. So I like to put on some hard, aggressive, sexual jazz, and it just riles me up, and I can go for minutes at a time at work. So, but yeah, Chow Yun-fat's playing like a saxophone, which is pretty fucking cool. And in The Killer, he's playing a harmonica. So I guess John Woo just really likes to see Chow Yun-fat, like, play different instruments.
Yeah. Well, did you know that was John Woo is the jazz bar owner in Hard Boiled?
I did.
Okay.
I didn't know it was, but I put a note. I said, "Is that John Woo?"
Yeah.
He has a trademarked freckles or something on his face that give him away. So that's how I spotted him.
Yeah, I think, like, because I saw him and I was like, oh, that's John Woo, right? And I was like, yeah, because it's like, it's just like he looks older now, but he's got that same hairline, kind of round face, and it's like that's old JW
and face freckles.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, same thing here, like with, like, the whole. Actually, the one thing I was thinking about with Seven Samurai as well was that back when our conversation came around, like, comparing, like, Seven Samurai and Magnificent Seven, when we were talking about, like, how one of the things that's kind of lost in Magnificent Seven from Seven Samurai is, like, the difference between swordplay and gunplay, and how how like there's like such an immediacy and like intensity with swords rather than guns that Seven Samurai capitalizes on, and Magnificent Seven just doesn't. That's the opposite problem. Where there's like the use of gunplay is like kind of mastered by John Woo. Like, I mean, I guess like John Woo kind of goes along with like when you think about like action movies. I mean, John Woo's kind of the name that goes along with that. I mean, that was like his career that he became famous for. But yeah, I mean, just like guys are getting shot left and right, but there's like it's still like what would you call it? There's a strong style nature of like taking multiple shots and still getting up and walking around with it, which is just like it's great.
Yeah. Well, it's like I said, like in a John Woo movie, you can get shot 6 times in the chest, but you can still like walk. Like you're a little hurt, you're stumbling, but you'll be fine. The only way to kill someone in a John Woo movie is to fucking put 60 bullets in them, or as seen in the warehouse scene, drive a motorcycle through your fucking body.
Oh,
the coolest
God.
suit. One of the coolest scenes in any movie. That guy fucking drives, or he like hammers his motorcycle through a human being. And like in the next scene you see it. It's like lodged inside his body.
Yeah, no, that is just man.
That's the only way to kill someone in these movies.
Yeah, no, that whole sequence is just like it's endless in a great way. Like there's just like so many things that are just like keep getting tossed at you, like this like the ways of guys, like guys get killed like mostly the same way, like they're getting shot to death, but then they put little twists on things, like no one guy dies exactly the same as another guy. And like when they start getting like a little bit more ambitious and hard-boiled, where like they're doing like the like profile shots of guys getting shot through, man, it's like because like other movies didn't do that. I don't think. Like I don't get the sense that like I try to think of stuff and I'm like, no, the first time I ever saw something like that was Hard Boiled. Yeah, no, like this, like I mean, The Killer and Hard Boiled are both like, I mean, those are like VHS staples of like the '90s. For like once you like if you started watching like your Tarantinos and stuff like that, you started hearing about John Woo, because I mean, it's Jackie Brown. Jackie Brown is you have Samuel Jackson's character talking about how everybody, all the guys he's selling guns to, they want 45s because the killer had a 45. They got to have a 45. And then we also learned that 45s have a serious jamming problem.
This is true.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sam knew.
And Elmore Leonard wrote that. So
right.
I don't know if that's true, but it sounds cool. And that's
good.
what's important. The one thing I started thinking about too is just like how like the action scenes in this movie are staged. Like a year or so ago, I was kind of digging through some of the like Shaw Brothers like kung fu martial arts stuff, and like how it wouldn't matter like the movies themselves are kind of just like connecting the dots to the next action sequence, and like pretty well have like sort of the same priorities as John Woo movies do, like about just like loyalty and honor and whatnot, and like manhood. And so like basically these movies are just like a translation of that, but shifting from like period pieces to contemporary action movies. One of the talking points that get brought up with these things too are that like it's like, oh, Hong Kong was a dangerous place at the time, and like, oh, there was like all this crime. I'm like, I don't know if the crime that was happening resembled that of John Woo movies, because that would be terrifying if that were the case.
Well, like I said, that's kind of how it was. You go into a restaurant, get some Peking duck, and you'd be lucky if you only got into one shootout.
Yeah. Oh man. So, oh, and you've been there.
He speaks true, man.
Yeah. So yeah, there's like an interesting like kind of shift from like how like filmmaking techniques of like presenting like sorry, I guess the one thing I was getting at with the talking about the martial arts movies was that like I'd be watching these, and then Chanel would walk into the room and kind of like stop and just start watching these action scenes, and she'd be like really like caught up in it and saying, wow, these are really good. I'm like, I know, like they're like these action scenes are like they're really like working on making them like have some weight and some pacing. And I mean, John Woo was like taking those same techniques that he would have been learning shooting these like these movies with Golden Harvest, and translating them to guns basically, and then like making it work, which is why guys get shot multiple times, because it's like getting punched multiple times. But like obviously I don't think guys are getting quite as shot as many times as guys get punched in something like 5 Element Ninjas or something like those along those lines.
Maybe in your world.
Yeah. Well, there's I mean, what about the theme of dual wielding guns and sliding down things and hitting accurately?
Yeah, I mean, people think Halo 2 invented that, but no.
No.
Hard boiled,
Yeah.
brah. Riding down those rails, double
Mm-hmm.
pistols with seemingly impossible amounts of ammo.
Yeah.
But, you never question it. It's
That's
like, yeah, of
right.
course that gun would have 80 bullets.
Yeah. Yeah, there's also kind of like a manhunter thing going on between these two movies where like we
Hmm.
both have like scenes where like the cops are kind of getting inside the mind of the killer.
Hmm.
And it's like the Will Graham thing because there's like the first one is in The Killer where Li Yang is like sitting in the chair when they've at Ah Zhong's house, and he's just sitting in the chair, and the camera pans in the same way over him twice, and it's like he's
Yeah.
being transposed into Ah Zhong's mind, and then he pulls the gun in the same way, and
Hmm.
whatever it is, this is my design, and then we,
Yeah.
we get that again in Hard Boiled too. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, where it's like he's getting inside his head in the at the library. Yeah, at the library. That's the scene where he
I,
does the.
that's,
He knows exactly where to turn left, and like he finds
yeah.
the Shakespeare Complete Works Volume 2 and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, that's some Will Graham stuff right
Yeah,
happening.
I think that's a bit of a stretch, but that library scene's really funny because there's like smoke machines going on in there, and you're like, man, libraries in Hong Kong are sure foggy. And
They probably it could be,
yeah, well, there is a lot of smog in China.
as you
I can
know.
I can attest to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's funny that scene where he pulls out that gun from the hollow book. I watched this movie with my roommate Scott, and he was like, man, he's like, I really wish I had a hollowed out book. He's like, I would just keep like Skittles in there or something so nobody can get at it. And I was like, you're right. It's like, because if you work in a place like where we work, people are always after your goodies, man. So you need a little bit extra defense to that. So I thought that was pretty fun.
So
What he said.
are you just talking about just like having some hollowed out books of candy in them, or are you actually going to start packing at work to defend those candies?
I prefer not to say in case of any legal issues down the road.
Yeah, let's not incriminate ourselves here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do not endorse Skittles in any way, shape, or form.
Both films also have imaginative uses for gunpowder in both of them. Because in The Killer, we have the scene where like you get, and it's all lovingly done too, where a bullet is like uncapped, and then like the gunpowder is used to cauterize the wound during a lull in action. And then here in Hard Boiled, it's used to blow that circuit pad.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in the first one, it's because he's in love with him, remember? That's why it's
Oh, it's
so.
explosive. It's the chemistry.
Get it?
Got it.
Get
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Did you ever play Lethal Enforcers at all when you were growing up?
I have no idea what that is. It sounds weird.
It was an arcade game. And there's the bit in Hard Boiled that, I mean, even as like when I was younger watching this, I was kind of like, wow, this is like exactly like a video game, because there's like that 2 minute and 40-second sequence. It's one continuous shot with our two leads going through the hospital and just blowing guys away. And there's a
okay.
point where the camera gets kind of ahead of them and goes around the corner, and a guy literally just hops up and goes, ah! And it's like, oh, and then they just get shot dead. And it's like,
Yeah.
I was like, I'm like, oh yeah, it is Lethal Enforcers.
No, I know what you mean now. That makes total sense.
Or that whole like litany of like that game genre of where it's like a rail shooter where you're just being kind of drug along, and then guys hop out and it's like, oh no, they're an innocent bystander, don't shoot them, and then you get deduced a point if you do hit them. Yeah,
Police Academy style.
yeah.
No, it's funny. Speaking of video games, when the tough guy who my roommate called Chinese, Charles Bronson,
Are you talking about Mad Dog?
Mad Dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in near the end, when he's like, he gets that badass pistol that just takes like one bullet at a time. I was thinking of Revolver Ocelot from the Metal Gear Solid games,
Yeah.
because it's just like a dude with like a real fancy gun, and it's just like it's so impractical. It's like one bullet at a time, like, but he made it work, and he made it look cool.
Everything with Mad Dog in that movie is awesome though.
Yeah, he fucking rules.
Yeah, like I was looking him up because I think his name is I don't know, double check on it. I think it's like Philip Kwok, and he's like got quite the kind of filmography too. He was in a bunch of really cool stuff, like going back from the 70s and stuff like that. Like he's always just kind of like a background character.
Right.
But yeah, no, he like that scene where him and Alan are having their face off in the hospital, and they're just like shooting the shit out of each other and trying to get one up over the other one. And then they comes to the point where they're in that room with the injured people and the nurses and whatnot. And then they put it on pause, and then they like both gentlemanly put their like fight us to the side and like kind of slowly put their guns down and are going to allow those people to get away. And then Johnny Wong shows up and says, "What the fuck?" and just mows them all down. And yeah, Mad Dog's expression at this like horrific act, like, just like beyond like repair, and just like that was like, wow, what a great moment. Even
it was fucking awesome.
Yeah, that was something. Oh, I love that moment. I always think about it. But yeah, Philip Kwok. Yeah, some of the highlights of his filmography are things like The Story of Ricky, aka Ricky O. The same year that Hard Boiled came out, he was also in the film The Cat from 1992, which is also from the director of Ricky O, Lam Nai Kai. Is how that's pronounced. And yeah, his career goes back. Like he's been in martial arts stuff like all in the like in the 70s, like the Five Deadly Venoms, Return of the Five Deadly Venoms. So yeah, he's got a real Master of the Flying Guillotine, which is super good. Yeah, no, he's got quite the pedigree behind him. He's a cool dude. Philip Kwok, the Chinese Charles Bronson.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty cool. I thought one scene was weird with him where when he's at the hospital and he like kills the informant guy.
Yeah.
And like he goes to the trouble of like throwing the body down like the laundry chute to like get rid of it.
Yeah.
But there's like fucking blood everywhere. And it's not gonna work, man. You can't do this inconspicuously anymore. Like there's so much blood fucking everywhere. Like
I think
just leave the body in the hallway at that point.
I think they were definitely aware of like the humor in that.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's so funny, because it's like hilarious, because like what the hell has happened here? And it's like, well, better get rid of the evidence. And it's just more like, yeah, I got rid of the body, and then he moved on. Yeah.
So there's two things I just want to say, and then that's about all I got to say about Hard Boiled.
Yep.
One thing, I think it's really fucking weird that Uncle Hoy just peels apples for other dudes. He's like, like I get that he's like this weird like like leader of the herd, like alpha lion or whatever, but he's like peeling these apples and just like feeding them to dudes. I was like, that's kind of weird.
What are you telling me that like old Chinese men didn't try feeding you apples when you were overseas?
It happened, but not in that way. Like there wasn't like 9 of me.
Oh.
It was more intimate, man. Come on.
Yeah. Over some gunpowder.
Over some gunpowder, yeah. And then one thing I think is just fucking hilarious, and one of the best parts in the movie is when Alan goes back to his houseboat, and he's like looking around. He's like, oh, something's up. And then like he turns and Chow Yun Fat fucking floats into the boat. Oh man, it's like it's such a weird like scene, like because his body literally floats. Like he doesn't jump. He's not like just there. Like he is flying, and it's fucking insane to see. So I thought that was really cool.
I just went back to my review for Hard Boiled from several months ago, and I wrote, I guess John Woo figured this might be his last chance before going to America to try and kill Chow Yun Fat off once and for all, and still be able to call it an on-set accident, because holy shit. Like, could you imagine working on this fucking movie as like a stuntman or like a principal actor, and just like goddamn, like you watch like even the trailer for this movie, and it's just like the exploding like wood and material just flying everywhere. Like I can't believe that. Like I don't know, they probably have like maybe looser rules back in 1992 91 when they were filming this, and they weren't like reporting to a union or whatever, and maybe doing things a little like fast and loose. But actually it's like after writing that, I was watching the one special feature on the Dragon Dynasty Blu-ray, and there's an interview with John Woo mentioning how like they had just done a scene with like Chow Yun Fat like running through some fire, like some flammables had just gone off, and like Chow Yun Fat's like, God damn it, he's trying to kill me here. And then he turned, then Chow Yun Fat turns to him and goes, oh, how'd it look? And then like I guess like as he walked past after laughing about that, you could see like his hair had been burned.
Oh god.
And I'm like, oh right, yeah, no, that's like all legit. And like, man, there's no CGI in this, like in either of these movies.
Mhm.
There's none. There's not
No.
there's not one piece of bullshit. It's all real. They're using like all like practical stuff, and
Mhm.
you can tell. The feel of the whole movie is so different than like if how it would be made today. You'd have CGI blood everywhere.
Mhm.
There probably wouldn't even be real people at some points. It would just be like computer generated people, and like it'd be like, isn't this cool? We're gonna outdo Hard Boiled with CGI guys, and they would just start
Yeah.
looking like those Matrix Revolution movies with all of the Agent Smiths and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
that's like what people want, I guess.
Those people are wrong. But no, there's like to go with what you said. There's a scene at the end when Chow Yun Fat's running with the baby in the hospital, and you can and like all the rooms are exploding behind him, and you can tell like it's not a stunt double. It's actually him running away from all these explosions. So I imagine that's the scene you were talking about.
Yeah, well, that was, oh man, when it was like, yeah, when the fireballs start going off behind him, and it's just like,
Mhm.
holy crap.
Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty fucking raw.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's hard, man.
Yeah.
Hard boiled, raw, and salad too. I guess throw that in there.
Salad. Yeah, I mean, like in this film too. I mean, it demonstrates that like the manliness of shooting yourself in the stomach, so as to make your assailant bend over with you, and then the other guy shoots his fucking eye through because he's just that good.
He's just that good, and that's a fucking awesome use of a prosthetic head.
Yeah.
It's wicked.
Yeah, I just love too. It's like this idea too that like somewhere like in the script writing process or in directing, it's like, hey, eye pupils look just like the bottom of a bullet, and it's like, yeah, and it's like, well, that's well observed. Good job, John Woo. I leave it to you to suss that information out and demonstrate it for all time in your film, which is proudly, I think, represented in the Criterion Collection, which I guess is to the chagrin of some people. Because RJ, this brings us to a feature that we missed last week on A Night to Remember. But I looked back, and there really wasn't that much hate on for that movie, but there is for our two films here under discussion.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, we better just get it over with.
Okay, it's like a
Hit
band-aid.
me, Papa.
Okay,
Yep.
So on Letterboxd, there was a season challenge thing called Sex and Zen and a Bullet in the Head week earlier in the year. And it appears a bunch of people who are like partaking in it, they don't like action movies and they got to watch The Killer. So there's a lot of like comments that like were pretty redundant. Like they were just like kind of saying the same thing. Like, oh, I don't
What
like
a bunch of nerds.
This is, yeah. So, I don't know. It's like I don't like action movies, and they all give the movie 2 stars because they don't like action movies.
It sounds like that guy that you were reading Amazon reviews from a while ago. Is like, I don't like westerns.
Not interested.
Not interested. 1 star.
All right.
Sorry, yeah.
So Chad S101 gave The Killer 2 stars. For this week's challenge, I wanted to watch Chungking Express, but I could not find that movie anywhere, and I had to go with The Killer as an alternative. After the first 2 acts, I was thinking this movie was a good choice. It had that 80s vibe, but it had a decent plot and a good amount of action.
What? Okay.
So I guess that 80s vibe is a bad thing.
Not in my books, man.
If this movie hit the landing or had a decent ending, I was thinking 3-star movie at worst. Well, the third act not only missed the landing, it crashed and burned in a spectacular way. The third act just got strange, turning into a nonsensical bromance, and includes some of the worst dialogue in movie history. Worst dialogue in movie history may be an understatement, so the worst dialogue since the spoken word originated is probably more accurate.
Jesus.
Yeah. So
this guy's getting a little heavy with that stuff.
Yeah. So I was going to say if we should have some real talk here about like, do you have the problem when you watch a movie about like what your Letterboxd star review is going to be?
I'll admit there are certain occasions where I'm watching a movie and I totally get distracted in the middle and I'm just like, what am I going to rate this fucking thing?
Yeah.
And it pulls me out of it sometimes. But if that happens, it's usually like, it either means that I'm not that interested in the movie, or I like it so much that, or I like it a lot, but there are like flaws to it that I'm like torn. So it does happen to me a few times, but you push through.
Yeah, I've listened to I've seen on some people they refuse to rate things, and I think it's sort of like a I kind of get that idea too, because it's like a weird throwback to like the strange thing of like Roger Ebert's like thumbs up, thumbs down, and then like in like the newspaper world being able to like reduce your feelings about a movie to like stars and like
Yeah.
4 stars or whatever being like the top or whatever. And it's just like it's so like it reduces people to like every viewing experience to like a consumer experience. And like I don't know how I feel about that, but like when I read people talk about it, well, I think this was almost a 3-star movie, but now it's a 2. It's just like, oh come on, like don't talk like that.
Yeah.
Like I can't take you seriously.
Petty.
So a fella named Auteur rated this film 2 stars. Squibs the movie. I almost wish I stayed away, but the list of shame beckons. The action sequences are thrilling and near operatic in their intensity and duration, but there is so much laughably bad and wrong in The Killer, and it is so very trapped in the 80s, there's no way I can appreciate it as the classic so many others see it as. First, there's the god-awful score that sounds like it was lifted from 80s rom-com montage sequences. Then there's the incessant dialogue consisting of nothing but meaningless platitudes. Occasionally, those two happen simultaneously, like the scene out in the field where Chow Yun-fat and Danny Lee wax nonsensical about justice and the nature of men, and I literally expected them to start making out. Women don't fare too well either. I get that this is a boys' club movie, but does the female lead have to be in hysterics the entire time? I don't think I've ever seen a more consistently helpless and belittled, bullied female character in my life, where the blindness that Yun-fat cause is actually used to facilitate scenes where she is lied to for her protection. Whatever. And let's not forget the endless abuse of slow motion. The Killer doesn't quite take the crown from Zack Snyder's 300 as the most annoying use of the technique, but it's certainly no less ridiculous. I hated Mission Impossible 2 for its slow motion, so why should this film get a pass? Sure, the film is interspersed with brilliant moments of action, but for every one of those, that there's a moment like the boat chase where the bad guys are not sure which beach Yun-fat landed on. Huh? But of course, there are the hundreds of near point-blank shots at our hero that are complete misses. The Killer is cheesy, half-ass, chauvinistic bullshit, and now that I've seen his calling card, I'm convinced John Woo is a director who should only be
A fart?
brought in for the money shots.
Gross. Well, I don't understand like all these people are like, oh, it's like 80s and stuff like that. It's like, well, yeah, it's a movie from the fucking 80s. Like, what do you expect? Not everything is like timeless, but like I don't know. I always see that as like a positive to movies when they're dated in their time, as long as it's not like maybe like say a comedy where the comedy like all the jokes are dated to like current events at that time or something like that, like score and stuff like that. I think it's nice to see stuff like that. And it seems like for both of those bad reviews that you just read, it's like both of those people are like, yeah, there's really good scenes, but I just don't like it. So like that's basically what they both say. They're like, yeah, there's really good stuff, but I don't like it. Well, so it's unforgivable.
Yeah, it seems like they're like they don't want to like it.
Yeah,
because it's like, yeah, sure, it might be like some of the most brilliant action scenes ever committed to celluloid, but thumbs down. Like, I don't like 80s movies, and it's like, well, what the like? That's not how you should be watching movies. So
I think they're lying to themselves.
Yeah, 100%. And it's so sad they're making it available all online for our perusal and reading on a podcast that they don't know about. House Haze on Hard Boiled, 2 stars. Nothing more than an action flick. Was expecting way more. Just shoot 60 fucking bullets before you even reload. The fuck.
Okay. Sure, man.
And then Ben DeBono, 2 stars. On the plus side, I suppose I liked it better than The Killer. On the negative side, it's a cliche-riddled snooze fest. Criterion made some weird choices in the early days. Allowing 2 dumb and dull action movies in their first 10 DVDs just might take the cake.
I'll take his cake, if you know what I mean.
Shove it in his face.
I wonder what his favorite Criterion Collection movies are. That's one day maybe we'll find out.
One day maybe we'll cross paths with Ben, and he can tell us how it really is.
The Sixth Man starring Marlon Wayans. I bet that's his favorite movie.
Well, would you like to know what Ben's favorite films are?
Lay it on me.
All right. 2001 Space Odyssey. Andrei Rublev. The Life Aquatic. and Ordinary People.
Well, 2001 and Life Aquatic are on there because he's heard other people talk about those movies. So I think he's just putting up a show, putting on a fancy shirt. I doubt he really likes that fucking, or either of those.
Well, I think actually when I was like seeing what those other people's reviews, what they also liked for their favorite films, I think they also had Wes Anderson movies. And what I'll say is I love Wes Anderson movies, but see, I think like Wes Anderson fans can be kind of tosspots.
Some of them are a little assertive.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. He also really likes My Dinner with Andre and gives that movie 5 stars.
Of course he does.
Which we'll watch that movie someday down the road.
Is that on the list?
That is on the Criterion Creeps way down the road, way down the road. A little Louis Malle.
I don't have to worry about it now, though.
No, you'll be dead by then. In China.
We all will.
In China, eating apples in the lap of old men.
Ugh, don't fucking remind me.
Well,
okay.
Any parting thoughts? Any feelings?
No, I just think the people who say they don't like these movies are either they just want to say they don't like it to be like contrary when they actually do, or if they feel they don't, or they're just shitty fucking people and they're like, oh, I don't know, I didn't. Or like the one guy is like, oh, it's not above, or it's below my taste. It's like, whatever, man. Just enjoy good things. Like
I just don't know what more you want, like, or what kind of, like, if you just don't like action movies, I'm like, okay, I guess, but
no, whatever. It's fine.
I don't like for the most part, like, I find most action movies like not particularly great, I guess, because that's pretty true of like most genres. Like most genre movies, like most horror movies aren't very good, but the really good ones are really, really, really good. It's kind of how it works, I think.
Well, we'll find them one day.
We'll make them pay.
Sure will.
Yeah, we're really doing well by like action fan reputations by like threatening people who don't like action movies.
What else are you supposed to do to get an audience?
Well, we're just living up to our names. We're the Creeps guys.
There you go.
Well, and I'm just going to say that if you don't like The Killer or Hard Boiled, we feel sorry for you.
Yeah, it's too bad that you can't just, find some joy in, good things.
Men being reduced to pulp by gunfire.
And if not, then what are we even doing here, man? What's the point? What
the hell are we doing here?
Right.
Oh, I've got one more bonus here. I just got to read it. This is a 1-star review for Hard Boiled. The cheesy action, the constant saxophone, the terrible dialogue. I'm sorry, Internet. Have I missed something? Maybe it's just one of those films that is so far removed from my preferences that it's hard to see any good in it. Is it one of those that people liked ironically? That's just trolling. That's just...
Yeah, I think if... for someone to say that stuff, it's not that it's like, I don't get it. Like, there's nothing to get. It's just like, there's nothing to get about these movies. There's no secret charm to them. It's well done stuff. Like, don't be an ass.
And one of his favorite films, I assume it's a man, could be a woman, I don't know, Juke, Grand Budapest Hotel.
Of course.
Oh, here's a review for Into the Wild. 1/2 star. Utterly disgusting. Probably the worst film I've ever seen. I wanted to yell "fuck off" at the screen the whole way through.
Does he know that really happened? Does he know that?
I guess he doesn't. Like, maybe he has some issues with Sean Penn. He needs to talk it out. Tweet it. We recommend you tweet Sean Penn and work it out. You two, come on.
Fuck. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm done.
All right. Yeah. Me too. Fuck this.
You ruined me.
Yeah.
You're worse than that chick with the honey and the coffee.
Yeah. So long, John Woo. It was great watching your movies again. As it's always a pleasure watching how action could be done, how to be men, how to, I don't know, just how to live.
How to live, man.
Yeah, and we'll see you on the other side.